Okay, so here's a short presentation on Irish dances for Leaving Cert. A lot of this will be information that you had for Junior Cert as well. I suppose the first thing here is to consider that while this is a topic we're covering for our Irish music essay, this will also be very helpful for the other part of your Irish music question, which is the listening question. It's not unusual at all for the first question in the listening part to be what type of dance are you hearing? What type of Irish dance is this? So this kind of has a crossover appeal for it. Okay, so here are the dances that we're kind of going to look at here: the reel, the single jig and the double jig, the slip jig, the hornpipe, the slide and the polka. Now, to be perfectly honest, guys, it's really the focus will be mainly on the reel, the jig and the hornpipe. The slide and polka, not so much. If you are writing an essay about Irish dances, yes, you'll need to know a bit, about all these pieces, about all these different types of dance. But if you were answering a question in the listening part here, you wouldn't necessarily be expected to recognize a slide or a polka. And you certainly won't need to know the difference between a single jig and a double jig when you're in the listening section here now. Okay, so moving on. So first of all, I showed you this grid in class. This was taken from the book that we did in class, which is the Dara Black book. So this is not my work. It's an excellent aid though. So essentially what I keep trying to say is the information here, if you were writing an essay about Irish dances, if you can get this information into your essay, it's fantastic. Everything is covered here. So first of all, you have the type of dance on the left hand side there, the time signature, a typical bar rhythm. Now let me just talk and pause about this to talk about this for a moment. So for example, the reel, which is in 4/4 or 2/2 time, that bar of rhythm you see there is 8 quavers. That does not mean every single bar of every reel ever written has 8 quavers in it. It is a typical bar of rhythm for a reel. Okay, it's also helpful if you can use these rhythms. You can give an illustration of these rhythms when writing your essays. It can be very helpful. The tempo is fast, and that's relevant. And then what I've done here, now this is not something you would write into your essay, a memory aid. How do you recognize if it's a reel? Now, what she has put here is the phrase Black and Decker. Now, again, we mentioned this in class. A lot of you won't know that term. They're a company who used to make, I think, like drills and hardware tools and stuff like that. But you can say it, it's 4 syllables that you can say quite fast. Black and Decker, Black and Decker, Black and Decker, Black and Decker. The one I use is Man United, Man United, Man United, Man United, if you're a football fan, okay? But there's an example of the type of rhythm, the type of dance, the speed, and importantly, an example of a reel. So this piece here, the green branch, is an example of a piece there. The single jig, okay? So again, the tempo is 6/8 time. It's fast, and there's an example of a piece of music. So the typical rhythm for a single jig would be 1, 2, 1, and 2, and 1, and 2. Remember, 6/8 time is, while technically yes, it's 6 quaver beats in a bar, there are 2 dotted crotchet beats. So the feel is a 2 feel. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And it's fast. Now, this becomes relevant when we're talking about the hornpipe. I want to discuss that in a moment, okay? And then the double jig, a typical jig, is just 2 groups of 3 quavers. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. If you think of the phrase rashers and sausages, rashers and sausages, rashers and sausages, rashers and sausages, okay? This is actually the same one that I used when I was learning as well. And an example of a double jig would be the Shandon Bells. So a single jig, the Humours of Limerick, and the double jig at Shandon Bells. The slip jig is just in 3. Okay, now when I say it's in 3, you might be looking at this case. It says 9/8. Yes, 9/8 is 9 quaver beats in a bar, but it's strictly speaking, we count it in 3 dotted crotchet beats in a bar. I don't know necessarily if this crotchet quaver at the end here is always right. I think it's more typical to have 9 quavers in a bar, but and the memory aid they've given you here is rashers and sausages bacon, rashers and sausages bacon. I don't know. The one I did was rashers and sizzling sausages, rashers and sizzling sausages. So if you can say that along to the song, you're hearing a slip jig. I think the slip jig, guys, to be honest, if something seems unusual about it, if there's an extra, it feels like there's an extra beat in the bar, like it's the bar doesn't start where you expect it to start, quite often that could be a slip jig, okay, because it's in 3. Everything else is in 2 or 4, whereas a slip jig though is in 3. 9/8 time. And then there's an example of the hunter's jig, or the one we did in class was the slip into spring from Riverdance, but that's a bit more complex than that. Now, the hornpipe. I just want to take a minute to describe the hornpipe to you. So the hornpipe, I always find it can be quite difficult sometimes to distinguish the difference between a hornpipe and a jig. Okay, so first of all, the hornpipe, the time signature is 4/4 as opposed to 6/8, which is the jig. But if you look at this rhythm here, and I think really this is more a typical rhythm throughout a hornpipe. Okay, what's written there is 1, 2, 3, 4 triplet, 1 and 2 and 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And the memory aid given there is horsey, horsey, triplet, T, triplet, T, which is fine. But I tend to think of more just on the horsey, 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 horsey. Just keep that rhythm going. But if you look at that and you compare that to a jig, that's very similar. It's very hard to tell the difference between this rhythm here, the single jig rhythm, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, and the hornpipe, which is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. And I suppose technically the difference is, so first of all, a hornpipe should be slower than a jig. It should have a slower feel. It's not always the case. Some people play the hornpipes too fast and the jigs too slow, but it should be slower. And there should be a greater emphasis on beats 1 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and we emphasize those notes there, okay? So just watch out for that, okay? The hornpipe, an example of the hornpipe is the Harvest Home. Then the slide and the polka are more ones that you would certainly need to speak about in your essay if you're writing an essay about Irish dances. So get the important information. It can be 12/8 or 6/8. There's a typical bar of the rhythm. It's fast and it's popular in the Slieve Lucra area of Ireland, and an example is the Dennis Murphy slide. The polka then is a fast 2/4, typical bar would be 4 quavers, and it was originally a Bohemian folk dance, so it has an Eastern European sound to it. A popular set dance in the Slieve Lucra area, and there's an example of it. The breeches, breeches full of stitches. Here we go. Okay, now guys, I'm not going to play through all of these excerpts here because that's up to you. These links are all there on mrmullinsmusicclass.com, so you can have a listen to the reel there, and do try getting used to saying that phrase along to Black and Decker, or Man United, Man United. The hornpipe, again, same thing. Just have a little listen. Here's the rhythm we're talking about, the hornpipe. We'll play this for a second. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Horsey, 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 horsey. You can see it's a slower tempo. Sorry, there was a little glitch there in the video. Sorry. Okay, so that it's just a slower tempo than you'd have for the jig, but it can be hard to discern the difference there. Sorry, moving on. And then the single jig, there's that rhythm on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So again, this should be slightly faster. In this case, it's not. So as I say, it can be hard to tell the difference. And 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. And I keep saying Humpty Dumpty, Humpty Dumpty. That just works for me, okay? So there you go. So the jig's slightly faster than the hornpipe, okay? I'm not going to play the rest of them here. We've got the slide, which is popular in the Slieve Lucra area, and the polka, which is a fast 2/4 time. This is kind of irrelevant. The instruments can be traditional or non-traditional. That doesn't matter too much. So there you go, guys. There's a little quick video tutorial on Irish dances. All right. Any questions? Get in touch. Thanks, guys.